Milwaukee's police chief blamed a Chicago-based communist group for igniting a second day of violence in the city. Founder of the group, Carl Dix, says he wasn't there but confirmed that some supporters went to Milwaukee.
Tonight, a curfew goes into effect in Milwaukee at 10 in the hope of heading off a third night of violence. Riots erupted Saturday.
Today, as Milwaukee residents struggled to find calm after a weekend marred with violence, Mayor Tom Barrett had a message for protesters.
Do not do further damage to this great neighborhood.
The shooting death on Saturday of 23-year-old Seville Smith by a police officer triggered protests that ended with torched out businesses, including this BP gas station.
It does appear that things are starting to get a little bit out of control.
There were more than a dozen arrests, and police, summoned riot gear, quickly found themselves in the paths of rocks, broken glass, even bullets.
U.S. police have charged a man over the gunning down of an imam and his associate near a New York mosque over the weekend. 35-year-old Oscar Morel was charged with second-degree murder and criminal possession of a weapon. This after they recovered a revolver at the man's home and clothes similar to those being worn in a surveillance video that showed the gunman. The arrest was announced hours after an emotional funeral service in New York City for Imam Maulama Akonji and his assistant Tharouddin. The crowd attending the funeral chanted anti-hate crime slogans and called for a thorough investigation into the shooting. They also blamed the recent anti-Islam rhetoric for hate crimes against Muslims across the United States.
Marching on Lupino. On Monday morning, hundreds of Corsicans made their way to this neighbourhood, home to families who've immigrated to the island. With tensions running high here, some were looking for trouble.
We want to show them that Corsica is our home. Wherever we go, we're at home.
Riot police were sent to the housing estate to prevent the demonstration from turning violent. This comes after an altercation on the beach at Cisco in the north of the island at the weekend. Someone was reported to have taken photographs of women swimming while wearing burkinis. A fight then broke out between a group of North African men and some young locals. 5 people sustained serious stab wounds inflicted by a harpoon and knives. Others got away with lighter injuries. Anger and informal protests that went on late into the night as 3 vehicles were burned.
In Zimbabwe, anti-government pressure is mounting, and the signs are everywhere, on the streets and online. There's an unprecedented movement that's calling for President Robert Mugabe to end his 36-year reign. Despite growing opposition, the 93-year-old president is refusing to go.
I still have the energy and still have the life and the blessings of God. I'll continue.
But even if he does go, where will the country go from there? And will it be able to survive its biggest political and economic unrest in years?
Now, at least 9 people have been killed in fresh clashes and gun battles across Indian-controlled Kashmir. The victims include a 16-year-old protester, a police commander, and 7 suspected militants. The teenage boy was fatally shot during clashes between Indian security forces and pro-independence groups in the city of Srinagar. Fresh violence broke out across the disputed Himalayan region as India was celebrating its 70th Independence Day anniversary. Indian authorities had earlier beefed up security to thwart protests. The teenager's death has brought to 58 the number of civilians killed in Kashmir since early July. The Muslim-majority region is divided between India and Pakistan. The 2 neighbors have fought 3 wars over the region since their independence in 1947.
Doctors Without Borders said airstrikes hit a hospital it was helping operate in northern Yemen Monday. The international group said it's currently assessing the situation to ensure the safety of patients and staff. Medical teams are assisting the wounded, and the number of casualties is still unknown. Residents and local officials told Reuters that at least 7 people were killed and 13 others wounded, although NBC News was not able to immediately verify that information.
The shattered remains of a police station. The aftermath of a car bomb that killed 1 child and 2 police officers and wounded 25 others in an attack on a busy road near the city of Diyarbakir. authorities blame Kurdish militants for the bombing in southwestern Turkey, where separatists have been waging an armed struggle for decades. Turkey's foreign minister, Mevlut Cavusoglu, promised vengeance.
Turkish security forces continue their ground operations and airstrikes against them. Our people should not worry. Those traitors will pay for what they did.
The attack comes on the 32nd anniversary of the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, taking up arms against the state in 1984. Fighting has intensified in the area ever since a ceasefire between the Turkish state and the PKK collapsed in July last year. Monday's victims are just the latest casualties in fighting that has claimed more than 40,000 lives.
BuzzFeed recently obtained a draft of a policy document being circulated throughout federal agencies, with new guidelines mandating that transgender people have access to bathrooms according to their gender identity. The new policy, which will be posted to the Federal Register later this week, will affect over 9,000 federal sites overseen by the General Service Administration and the employees working in them, as well as non-employees visiting the facilities. These facilities will include courthouses, post offices, laboratories, and general federal office buildings. The policy comes a few months after North Carolina's Republican-led legislature passed the nation's strictest anti-trans bathroom bill.
This Monday, several gay activists are taking part in the Gays Against Guns movement. After the horrific mass shooting at Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida, they've made it a goal to create a movement that will directly plot against gun companies. The group publicly stated that they would no longer stand by and watch the gun industry profit from death. Ken Kidd, a leader in the Gays Against Guns movement, stated, "We are targeting corporations that either invest in the gun industry or align themselves with the NRA."
These mermaids made a splash on the sandy shores of Rio de Janeiro at a party to celebrate diversity. The Mermaid Festival was organised by the Danish Pavilion on the sidelines of the Summer Olympic Games being held in the Brazilian city. For the Danish delegates, the event was a chance to connect to Rio's LGBT community and Denmark's long history of inclusiveness.
I think for Denmark, whatever is said, openness is still a very important thing for a Danish democracy. All voices need to be heard, and we just want to keep on holding this human idea high. And we want to contribute now to the Olympics, saying this is actually what we want to say.
People attending the festival said having gay and lesbian athletes in the Olympics was sending a positive message.
I think it sends the message that we, the LGBT community, exist and have a voice. We deserve a voice that isn't denied day to day. When we take the bus, when we go to work, go to university or not, this voice can't be denied, and the Olympics gives us this opportunity to have a bit of visibility.
Stepping up efforts to counter online harassment in the UK, creating a special unit critics have already dubbed the Thought Police. The program will cost almost £2 million, with 5 detectives and an army of volunteers hunting down internet trolls. Police say there's been a recent surge in sexist and racist abuse on social media. Culprits could face up to 2 years in prison, and the initiative, though, has been widely ridiculed online.
The Thought Police would be better employed on our streets instead of trying to catch out genuine free speech tweeters.
We have jihadists who have fought for ISIS roaming the streets, and they're bothered about trolls.
Scotland Yard reduces real policing by £2 million a year. Nice.
A fatal earthquake has hit the Cayoma province in the copper-producing region of Arequipa in southern Peru. The country's National Defense Institute says at least 9 bodies have been recovered and more than 24 people have been injured. As many as 80 dwellings have been destroyed. The United States Geological Survey reported the earthquake as having a 5.4 magnitude. The high-altitude Andean villages of Achoma and Yanche bore the brunt of the quake, which began at a depth of 8 kilometres. The area is prone to seismic activity. Arequipa was hit by a 4.3 earthquake just over 2 weeks ago.
Take a look at this. Wow, a brush fire in northern Oregon morphs into a twister
That's what they call a fire NATO, even though it put out more smoke than flames.
Well, but you can see the flames right along the ground there. The Cornelius Fire Department says high winds kind of helped twirl that fire into that funnel shape. Thankfully, no buildings were damaged and no one was hurt, but quite an impressive sight.
Yeah, and that's a story out west, is the dryness of the ground and also the wildfires that are happening in California, forcing people to evacuate, thousands of them.
U.S. President Barack Obama has issued a disaster declaration for flood-devastated Louisiana. Emergency workers have rescued thousands of stranded residents. At least 5 people are reported dead. U.S. Coast Guard helicopters, high water vehicles, and boats have taken part in the rescue operation.
Massive flooding continued to wreak havoc in southern Louisiana Monday, leaving thousands of people homeless and stranded. But once the waters recede and residents begin to rebuild the parts of their lives destroyed by the flood, experts say there could be a different threat waiting for them: the Zika virus. The dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine told USA Today the floodwaters could wash away a lot of Aedes aegypti mosquitoes, which carry the Zika virus, and their eggs. But eggs that have already been laid in containers, like an empty bucket, could be protected from the water and stimulated to hatch once the flooding stops. According to the World Health Organization, standing water caused by flooding can become breeding grounds for mosquitoes that carry diseases like Zika, West Nile, and malaria.
More troubles in Venezuela. The economic problems in that socialist country now leading to an outbreak of malaria, a disease which had previously disappeared from the country. Liz, how did this happen?
Yeah, so what's going on is, you're right, Venezuela was thought to have officially eradicated in 1961. Now it's exploding to levels of malaria in Venezuela not seen since 1941. What's happening? People are so poor and so desperate for work. They're working in the watery mine pits to look for gold in the country's mines. That is a breeding ground for the mosquitoes that carry malaria. So they're coming back into the cities. Now more than half of the states in Venezuela have malaria reported in it. It's an unbelievable problem now exploding in Venezuela.
So they're so desperate they're just wherever they can get their hands on something of value.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the malaria cases are nearly doubling year over year in the first 6 months of this year.
Nigeria has reported that 2 children in Borno State have been paralyzed by polio. It's the first time in 2 years that the disease has been detected in Africa. Nigeria has now announced an emergency mass polio vaccination campaign.
California's controversial vaccination law is now in effect, and that means mandatory vaccinations in order to return to school.
LAUSD kids start school tomorrow.
No shots, no school. LAUSD, like districts throughout the state, will not allow students to start school tomorrow if they haven't received the required vaccinations. There will be no grace period.
All schools are instructed to stop families at the door as they're enrolling and to ask for an immunization record.
California's new law, SB 277, took effect July 1st and requires all students entering kindergarten and 7th grade to be fully immunized unless they have a medical exemption. Personal belief exemptions are no longer valid. Claudia Galvez showed up with her 5-year-old daughter to kindergarten orientation this morning, only to be told she is missing 2 required vaccines.
And what did they tell you at the school as far as if she didn't have those?
She can't start. Yeah,
so there would be no first day?
No first day until she got them.
Families have packed the district's 6 immunization clinics. The wait here in Reseda is up to 6 hours long, and that's even with extended hours.
Russia preparing for massive war by building dozens of underground nuclear command posts. It is clear that Russia is modernizing its strategic forces, Scaparotti told a conference sponsored by the U.S. Strategic Command. Russian doctrine states that tactical nuclear weapons may be used in a conventional response scenario, Scaparotti said on July 27. This is alarming and it underscores why our country's nuclear forces and NATO's continues to be a vital component of our deterrence.
Russian military has started anti-terror naval exercises in the eastern Mediterranean near Syria. Russia's defense ministry says the drills are aimed at testing the Navy's ability to respond to what it calls crisis situations of a terrorist nature. The ministry added that a naval strike force would fire artillery and missiles in combat-like conditions during the exercises. 2 vessels equipped with long-range cruise missiles are also taking part in the tactical drills. The Russian military has used similar missiles last year to strike the Daesh terrorist group in Syria.
Japanese media say the country will develop a new land-to-sea missile that has a range of 300 kilometers. The new weapon is expected to be deployed on islands such as Miyako in 2023. Miyako sits at the mouth of the Miyako Strait, an international waterway which is also a major route for the Chinese Navy to enter the Pacific Ocean. If the new missile is deployed, it could threaten all Chinese ships in the waters surrounding the Diaoyu Islands, which are only 170 kilometers away from Miyako. And earlier, Japan and the US held a drill on blocking the Miyako Strait. Chinese experts say if Japan unilaterally blocked the strait, it will be considered as an act of war and should not be tolerated.
They're stating here Sputnik is reporting that the placement of the Vietnam of rocket systems capable of striking China is now dramatically raising the stakes over the disputed waters and territories, all but forcing an active escalation by Beijing. Now, it's only a matter of time. We have been reporting, though, that there has been increased Chinese naval presence in the South China Sea. Increased, of course, also the new reinforced hangars on the islands, too. According to Reuters, they report that Vietnam had discreetly fortified several of its own islands in the disputed South China Sea with new mobile rocket launchers capable of striking those fortified runways that China has built on their weaponized islands in that trade route.
Of Germany's domestic security service has warned that over 340 times radical Islamic groups have tried to recruit refugees to their organization. They've been targeting asylum centers. He's not just talking about organizations, terrorist organizations like the Islamic State. He's also looking at those groups that could provide materials for what he termed self-radicalization that could result in lone wolf attacks. Now, he wants more power for his organization to be able to look into exactly which religious groups are dealing with refugees here in Germany. And it comes as people across the country are starting to get more concerned about who's coming to Germany and who's already here.
Asylum seekers cause a massive financial burden for our state, and as we have seen during the last few weeks, there are security problems. Take the most recent attack in Ansbach and Reutlingen.
A New Jersey mayor is facing some criticism for a memorial honoring fallen vets at a public library. It shows a soldier leaning down in front of a cross.
And while a humanist group is calling for it to be taken down, not everyone agrees. CBS 2's Tracy Carrasco has more on the controversy, new at 11.
Among the tributes to those who have served our country outside Veteran Memorial Library in Roselle Park, New Jersey, is a silhouette of a soldier kneeling at a cross, and now the center of a controversy among residents, including Gregory Story.
It's a very touching memorial, but the problem is there's a cross in it, which singles out veterans of one religion.
The memorial, paid for and donated by Mayor Carl Hokinson, was installed on July 29th by city workers, and it was a surprise to the board who runs the library.
The mayor's my boss. We listen to him. It was not put through the Board of Trustees.
Story says the memorial violates the separation of church and state and contacted the American Humanist Association, who sent a letter to the mayor stating this letter serves as an official notice of the unconstitutional activity and demands that the borough remove the cross from government property immediately or risk legal action.
Generations of veterans have fought and died to defend that Constitution that he's now violating.
The mayor, a former Marine, would not speak to us on camera, but told us over the phone the memorial is out of respect to all veterans. Does the cross offend you?
No, it's good. It's good. It's just wrong for imposing one's will on other people.
I happen to think it's a beautiful memorial. My husband is a veteran.
The Borough Council will meet on Thursday and decide what to do about the memorial.